Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday, Episode 4. The Mirror. Written and read for you by Jason King. Each has to walk through the Valley of the Dragon if he is to become a true knight of the dawn sky. Each must face the suffocating fog of the dragon's breath. It burns the skin, stings the nose, and worst of all, it blinds the eyes. Within that fog lurks horrors unspeakable, nightmares made flesh. But the most terrifying peril in the Valley of the Dragon, the thing that stops hearts and shatters most men, is the mirror. The soul mirror, or the mirror of judgment it is called by some, a standing man-sized pool of liquid glass. The mirror can show one all things, the answers to questions, the future of nations, even the lands beyond the veil of death. But first, it must exact a price. To see oneself as you really are, to know all the consequences, both good and bad, of one's choices, to dispel all self-deception and deflate all excuses, this is what the mirror requires. 'Tis a simple thing, you might say, to gaze at one's reflection, but truth can cut, and comprehending self is a burden few can bear, and madness often follows. Only those who know themselves, truly know themselves, can survive looking into the mirror. A man who owns his choices, not just rejoicing in the happiness he has wrought, but a man that is willing to claim the sorrows he's spread, only such a man can survive the soul-scouring revelation of the mirror of judgment. Essex stepped out of the burning fog into a ring of clear air. In the center of the clearing was a tall, oval-shaped frame of white metal. Its edges were intricately worked with patterns that seemed to shift and change right before the eyes. In its center, where there ought to have been glass, was blackness. Thick, total, absolute darkness. It was as if a pit had been set on its side, so that one could walk right in. Essex had been warned of the oddities in this place of testing, things that seemed to be taken from dreams and deposited in reality. But this place, this valley, all of it was like that, quiet as death and blanketed in that stinging fog. Essex had even thought he'd seen movement in the fog as he walked for hours, unsure of where he was going, flitting shapes of things large and clawed. Yet he knew only one at a time could pass through the valley. He knew he was alone, wasn't he? Essex approached the mirror, half afraid that he would somehow fall into that pit of total blackness. But as he drew closer, the darkness faded, replaced by what looked like rippling water. He caught himself stretching out an arm to touch the surface of that water, but drew back. Touching the mirror was death, his master had warned him. The rippling slowly stopped, and the crystal blue liquid settled into a flat, shimmering plate of glass. Essex's shape formed in the mirror, and it looked much as it always did. He stared at his mop of unruly brown hair, his beady dark eyes, a nose that was crooked from being broken over and over again in his battle training, and that long scar on his left cheek from the time he tried to force himself on that girl, the one who'd fought back. Wait, Essex stopped. Where had that come from? He'd never hurt any girl. The scar was from sparring with Hanlon. Hanlon, his best friend and brother recruit for the Knights of the Dawn Sky. A friend he'd known since he was 11. The same Hanlon Essex had beaten to death for stealing 6 gold coins from his purse. Essex started. No, that wasn't right. Hanlon had fallen down the back stairs in their barracks. That was how he died, wasn't it? It was the mirror. It was doing something to his mind. Essex wanted to look away, but his body was frozen, eyes locking with the eyes in his reflection. Only those eyes had become red and reptilian-like. Those couldn't be his eyes. They were demonic. His face began to change, skin twisting and blackening until he looked like the mask children wore during winter solstice when they pretended to scare away evil spirits, for which they were awarded gifts and treats. Essex had been one of those children once. He remembered donning his demon mask and terrorizing the other, smaller children, chasing them and bullying them into giving him their candy. When he became too old to wear the mask and solicit gifts from strangers, Essex had still gone out during the festival to scare the children. He remembered one fat little boy that refused to give up his sweet roll and silver coin. Essex had drowned him in a horse's trough. The reflection was completely monstrous now. Thick, black, scaly skin, long claws on his hands, glowing red eyes, and horns jutting out just above his brow. It was horrible. Essex shook, trying with all his might to run away from the mirror, to disappear back into the fog. "Yes, I did those things," he screamed. "I raped the girl, killed Hanlon, and drowned that little boy. I did them!" It was true. All of it was true. It had always been so, no matter what Essex had told himself or others. He was a monster, and that was what the mirror was showing him. The white metal frame of the mirror began to glow, its engraved patterns moving faster, rearranging themselves into different trailing designs. The glass of the mirror rippled like liquid and then disappeared, replaced again by that total blackness. It began to suck him in. Essex called for help as he tried to break the pull of the mirror. Soon he was on the ground, his nails leaving claw marks in the dirt as he was lifted into the air by his feet and hurled into that blackness. He expected to fall forever in some dark pit of hell, but Essex soon found himself walking again in the Valley of the Dragon, surrounded by fog. It no longer stung his flesh, for it was now made of black scales. It no longer blinded him, as his red vision could see through the fog. It no longer suffocated him, but gave him energy as he breathed it in. He now knew what the shapes he'd seen moving about in the fog were, for he was one of them, a monster, now and truly so. His physical appearance showing what he really was. Thanks for listening to Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday, Episode 4. We're always looking for some stories to read, and we are going to try and get some different readers so you don't have to listen to my voice all the time. So if you have a story that you want to have read on this podcast, please email it to contact@immortal-works.com. Thanks.